Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to 5 creepy and disturbing true camp- camping horror stories. This is by Horror Nights. If you guys want to watch the original video, the link will be in the description down below. I will copy the link and put it in the description if you guys want to watch the original video. Um, yeah, here we go.
Horror Nights presents 5 creepy and disturbing true camping horror stories. Number 5. The murders of Sarah, Stephen, and Scott Potter. On July 15, 1989, Sarah Potter, 34, took her 2 sons, Stephen, 8, and Scott, 5, camping in a national park in California. The boys were sleeping in their own separate tent, not too far away from Sarah's. Stephen had been excited to stay in a tent by himself on their big camping trip. After roasting some marshmallows over the fire, Sarah put her sons to bed and then stayed out to read by the fire. That's when a man named Brent Stewart happened on the camp. He startled Sarah, but she got even more afraid when he pulled out a knife. He ordered her into his tent, where she was sexually assaulted and then stabbed to death. After killing the single mother, Stewart walked back to his own camp, packed up, and drove away. 3 days later, on the day after the family was supposed to return to their home in San Diego, the boy's father called the police because he hadn't heard from Sarah, and that was odd. They searched the park and found Sarah's dead body in her tent.
Oh my god.
However, the boys were gone. The forest was searched by hundreds of volunteers, but no trace of them could be found. A year later, a hunter came across the remains of 2 small bodies. It was Stephen and Scott. They had died together a few miles away from their campsite. The police believe they woke up, found their mother dead, and when they went to get help, they got lost in the woods and died of dehydration. Stewart, who was arrested shortly after Sarah's body was discovered, was also charged with the deaths of Scott and Sarah. He was sentenced to life in prison, but was murdered in the showers after serving only 3 years. Number 4. The murder of James Weiler and the disappearance of Michelle.
Okay. Wait, let me say something. If you're going camping in some type of forest, you have to be careful because, you may not know if there's someone out there trying to kill you and all. But also, like, you can't. But why would you want to do that, though? It just may seem like when she was assaulted and then stabbed to death, she seems to have been as dead, and then her sons had found her the next day, died. Then they went to go get help, but they had no food or water to keep them alive, so they had died of hydration or dehydration. And apparently, I guess they were both all dead together.
Michelle Tucker. Over the May long weekend in 1992, James Weiler and Michelle Tucker were camping near the small town of Bala, Ontario, Canada. It was supposed to be a romantic weekend away for the couple, who were both 23. The couple had spent the Friday afternoon enjoying themselves by the lake, and then a group of 6 loud teenagers set up camp about 10 feet away from them. The young couple tried to ignore the youths, but the group seemed set on disrupting the couple. When Weiler and Tucker started to pack up their stuff to find somewhere else to go, it angered the biggest of the teenagers, a 17-year-old named Michael Spitz, and he started to mouth off to the couple. Weiler, who was fed up at this point, started yelling at the group. Things spiraled out of control quickly, and pushing led to punches, and 6 youths, which included 2 girls, swarmed Wyler. Tucker screamed and tried to tear them off her boyfriend, but to no avail. When Wyler lost consciousness, Spitz ordered him to be picked up and carried to the water. Tucker was held by 2 of the teens and forced to watch as they held Wyler's head under the water. His body jerked, but then it stopped moving. At that point, the stress caused Tucker to hyperventilate, and she fainted. When she woke up, she saw the gang huddling in a group about 10 feet from her. She got up, and as dizzy as she was, she ran with all her might. When she got 100 feet away from them, she noticed a little enclave in the rocky terrain and hid there. All of the teens ran by her except for Spitz. He stood near where Tucker was hiding,
Oh my God.
but he couldn't see her. Full of rage and fear for her own life, Tucker picked up a large, jagged rock and hurled it at Spitz's head. Tucker, who was a university athlete, scored a direct hit and hit Spitz in the back of the head. He was dazed, and Tucker quickly picked up another rock and hit him again in the head. He fell to the ground, and Tucker continued to beat his head in with the rock. By the time Tucker was done, she was covered in blood and brains, and it was starting to get cold. She didn't see any of the gang members, so she ran to get help. The first cottage she came upon, she started banging on the door. The middle-aged woman opened the door and was shocked to see the young girl covered in blood at the door. She let Tucker in, and that's when she noticed that the woman was having a party. She also noticed that it must be a family party because everyone looked oddly similar. Everyone stared at her and then started asking her questions. She explained that she and her boyfriend had been attacked and that she had to kill one of them to save her own life. That's when Tucker looked around the house and noticed that one of the pictures looked awfully familiar. That's when she realized that it was Spitz in the picture. Tucker knew she had to leave, but they wouldn't let her. Suddenly it dawned on one of the partygoers that something odd was going on. They asked Tucker to describe the boy she killed. When she said nothing, a silence spread across the party. It was shattered by the panicked screams of the woman who answered the door. "Did you kill Michael? My baby? My Michael?" Tucker didn't say anything, and again tried to leave, but the family wasn't going to let her go anywhere.
Oh no.
The police were called to deal with the bodies of Wyler and Tucker. However, the whereabouts of Tucker remain a mystery, and she is classified as a missing person. There are rumors that she is still alive and tortured daily in a remote cabin in the woods. Sadly, her family just hopes that she is dead. Number 3.
Well, let me say this. That's just wrong. That's just wrong. He said, they just hope that her family just hopes that she's dead. That's just wrong. Why? What?
The Lake Bodom murders. On June 4, 1960, 2 18-year-old males and 2 15-year-old females were camping at Lake Bodom, which is near Espoo, Finland. Sometime between 4 and 6 a.m., someone attacked the 4 teenagers with a knife and a blunt object. Both of the young women, along with one of the young men, died as a result of the attack. The lone survivor was Nils Gustafsson. He was stabbed, suffered a concussion, his facial bones were fractured, and his jaw was broken. He said he didn't remember anything from the attack. The senseless and grisly murders haunted the area for many years. There have been a few suspects in the case, including a man named Vladimir Gilstrom, who committed suicide 12 years to the day of the murder. In his suicide note, he claimed responsibility for the killings, but his wife swears he was home in bed on the night of the murders. Gustafsson, the lone survivor, was also a suspect, and he was charged with the murders in 2004. The police believed he got enraged because he couldn't have sex with one of the girls, so he beat and stabbed his best friend along with the 2 girls to death,
and
then inflicted the wounds on himself. Ultimately, Gustafsson was acquitted, and the grisly triple murder remains unsolved. Number 2. Alexis Pilgrim and Josh Hamilton's bad trip. On July 13, 2001, Alexis Pilgrim and her boyfriend, Josh Hamilton, both 17, went camping not far from their homes in Knoxville, Tennessee. When they didn't return home on Sunday, both of their parents called the police, and the area where they went camping was searched. Sadly, both teenagers were found dead, and both had died in a gruesome fashion. Josh looked like he'd been attacked by a wild animal. He had bite marks all over his body. His throat had been ripped out, and it looked like something had eaten out of his abdomen. Sarah was found 20 feet away from their tent. She was covered in blood, and it looked like her throat had been slit. A small pocket knife was found nearby. Both bodies were taken to the coroners, and they made a horrible discovery. In Pilgrim's stomach, there was human flesh and organs. There was also PCP in both of their systems.
Oh, Jesus.
It's believed that Pilgrim stole what she thought was marijuana from her brother. However, this was no normal weed. It had been laced with PCP. Pilgrim and Hamilton had smoked it without knowing it, and it must have caused severe hallucinations. This led to Pilgrim attacking her boyfriend and eating him alive.
Oh my God.
After the drugs had worn off, Pilgrim was overcome with guilt and disgust, so she took her own life by slitting her throat. Number 1. The Cabin in the Woods. In 2012, 12-year-old Felix Jackson was on a Boy Scout camping trip in Oregon, but somehow he got separated from the rest of his troop. Over the next couple of hours, Felix didn't do what he should have, which is to stay in one place and wait to be found. Instead, Felix walked around the forest looking for help. He was nowhere near any path when he happened to cross an old single-room cabin. He knocked on the door, and it opened. He walked inside, and he was immediately frozen with fear. That freeze was broken when he started screaming louder than he ever thought possible.
Oh my goodness.
The Scoutmaster and the other scouts heard Felix's scream. The Scoutmaster, Alan Stafford, had one of the boys call the emergency line on the satellite phone, and then he charged in the direction of the screams. As Stanford neared the screams, he thought that the boy was being attacked by a bear by the nature of his screams. Then the screams suddenly came to a stop, and Stafford's heart sunk. Stafford called out for the boy, but there was no reply. He kept moving towards the direction of the last screams. Once he got closer, he saw the cabin, so he headed in that direction, and then he saw Alex laying motionless on the ground. He rushed to the boy and found that he had just passed out. As Stafford kneeled next to Felix, he came to, and he realized where he was. Again, Felix started screaming. Stafford asked what was wrong, but Alex wouldn't say anything. He just kept screaming. Stafford realized that whatever scared Felix was in the cabin, and he didn't think it was dangerous. Otherwise, it would have come out and attacked the screaming boy already. So Stafford told Felix to stay where he was, and Stafford moved slowly towards the cabin's door. When he looked inside, there was a bed in the middle of the room, but on the walls were leathered faces, stretched out and nailed to the walls. The smell was awful, and Stafford threw up. When the police arrived, they counted 43 faces.
Whoa!
Some were a decade old, but one was only 3 days old. What is really odd is that the police didn't have 43 bodies without faces. In fact, they had none. The DNA taken from the faces was linked to missing people's reports from all over North America, but there were no reports of bodies without faces being found that matched the faces on the wall. The area around the cabin was excavated, but no bodies were ever found. Also, no DNA or fingerprints were found inside the wood cabin. So who owns it and who nailed the faces to the wall is still a mystery. Subscribe for more.
Okay, Well, I guess that's it. So, again, this is 5 creepy and disturbing true camping horror stories. This is again by Horror Nights. This guy is really, really, really good at telling really good horror stories. This really scared me to death, and that was my reaction of how I somehow saw these disturbing pictures, and somehow yeah, when this woman or female was eating her boyfriend alive, and then she took her own life by cutting her own throat with a pocket knife. That's very disturbing to see and all. So, apparently, since since she had murdered him, it may have been like a little. She may have been hungry, or maybe she didn't have any food. But with the fifth one of the first video picture I saw was when I forgot what it was, but yeah. Again, this is 5, one more time, this is 5 creepy and disturbing true camping horror stories. And this is by Horror Nights. He tells really good horror stories. And Mr. Nightmare does too. If you don't know Mr. Nightmare, I will show another video next time to show you who he is. I was doing a video called 10 really creepy true stories, but I think I have to go for it again, so yeah. If you guys enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to Horror Nights. Again, he tells really good stories like Mr. Nightmare does. This says subscribe for more voiceover McLar House. So apparently, I don't know who he is. I'm probably gonna Google him next after this. But, um, but, yeah. I'll see you guys next time, and see you soon.